유명 과에 동행지를 집에 가서 어떻게 인정하지만 동 기원 동행.是有些，确实没有吧？可能有那些没有那种人的场面，给了这个教育的这种一个，我们那你们记过是吧？但你们的往里的来啥地方，来的身边来上面来西，你就来身边来西的，来的那的双眼可能，的呢上面来西的，两岸给。但两个人现在另外一种的，教我们是这么的来上的意思。我今天上了今天告诉我的，这个教培，但来几个就多么明白，来多么就基本上老师我他的这个有点之类。第一章，观众会有人开始呢，科技就。来自观众的统计的用的可能在那种，现在用的可能的马里拉的那种，很多是的过了的考虑过的。但他们对那个中国的上面呢，对他们欣赏不起，这你这送老送老就能够对那中国什么事情看得起用过的，对他们都是这个。그럴 때 깔래 감시우스 타면지 간지는 제주지 근주지 전대나 제주지 근주 사이먼 배 사투리 내가 동의는 꼴 타면지 쉬세요 용되죠 그것이 대체기 근주로 요는 상가서 다 되지 또 다음에 남자는 신대는 법준티 가시 다음에 남자는 신대 아니, 아버지 좀 뭔가 잡아서. 또 아버지는 담보 조직이 나가지 송어가지. 또 조직이 나가더라. 조직 손은 되고 조직만 손은 동네. 어디서 조직이 그거 지시. 아니 조직이 내는데 손에. 아버지 담보지에. 담보지를 못 줄 거라. 조직이 나를 송거 있는 배우 지고 있거든. 대단한 송도가 那说大家他们就好过年落雨，但这些书里面他们书里面的时间，俺的提前，这些书里最动人无锡是干这事情，干部的，这点呢是有些同学人家都见过我去，俺的兄弟看有人见过有，但提前的呀。근데 단디나라 요람기 세진이나라 조진이다가 참도 송도 대리자가다 시라비다가티 저거저거 민주들은 저거저거 남자들 저거저거 민주들은 유인자 대단한 마송과 대인들이 때리는 타버도 남자신 땡도 스토가 남자신 수지 상이 ndiyaamare kanda koe tsawar chube mari bade karigi sunchumure sina koe tsawar chube mari bade riba yishi ki sunchumure tena zenda musu lo riba yishi ki sunchumure chezan dana kala tawa sunwata ranshi marwala tuchuwa sunwale kansa chuchi tanzengi zendang kansa chuchi dana to shirati juli chigurati tatame na monti dire kendere dana to shirati juli chigurati habarti dana to shirati gonjong mola rotuya panjeni uche chawchi yochibala sentiji samle chigurati 제가 상대를 가지고 매주를 상대를 가지고 야무지는 거는 저기 가서 매주 들어오지. 나도 신이 나도 신이 나도 대용을 제가리야. 저기 나도 매주 들어오지. 근데 나도 신이 내는 때는 거기서 또 돌지. 또 숨어지. 제가 나도 신이 rinpoche lama sundu tangi mi junzani ya namjimana sindu de rinpoche tuti sindu de rinpoche tuti tangi juji na tene rinpoche tuti tangi juji watu sibiyu jesa sindu de rinpoche tuti tangi juji tawana chachungi na 생치를 지용한 라바는 또 왔습니다. 생치를 지용한 라바는 또 와. 생남을 이용한데, 이용 매바. 제가 그 생치를 지용한 라바는 원문의 유두주에 유리야 차단기 이용 라바시티 수진강 숨어 있는 가도 유리자 저리 분부 저리 라베 생용 라바는 통해. 자치 이나야 진구 초송의 생용을 처음으로 도안에 신지지의 감공이 로 아니 제가 상대니까 된거 되게 신지 공남스보다 공종이 시럽 집이네요. 근데 이상 공종이 시럽 뭐 가는 집에 있나요? 공종이 시럽 집이야. 아니 생지지가 상대당도 니도 미좀 연체 되게 다 간다 강고는 생지 고가를 시내 되는 거지 고가를 한테 이거는 생활을 도와줘 다 생마주 도와줘 다 생디 된진지 치원에 마주를 도와줘 무엇을 된진지를 노니제는 방송을 그때 실험을 하도록 어떻게 이전시에 뭐 상대 하도록 실험 생활을 도와지 가서 저들만 최근에 저가 상대에 소문나시 시설 수준의 것을 저들가 놓으시죠. 그때는 그러나 본부 때문에 지키 강사 사실 때문에 나한테 공부 때문에 생기 딸에게 신분지 제도가 시 말이 되시 때문에 돈이 싫어 전전달이 담시고 때문에 돈이 싫어 전전달이 담지 상대에서 원하는 점을 샤는 일이 다른 개인의 걸로 숨어있지. 다른 생계의 뽕받다는지, 다른 생계의 뽕받기 수준은 제도, 뽕받다는 수준을 지고 있는 상대의 다르게 제대로 숨어있지. 다른 개인의 생각이 나와서는 되는 뽕받 유행이 밑에 컴퍼니 서비스 없었던 시간이 대다수는 또 리뷰도 처음으로 들리지가 담지 않나요? 고신도 좀 제도만 어디도 저리가 어디는 하고 있는 때는 근데 고아 돌아가는 데지 그렇지 어디서
하죠.
그때 저기 저기다 돈을 넘지만 그러지 돌리지 손 그때
A new organizer.
Yes.
지금들이 돈을 넘지는 걸 요청한다. 다음 주에 로지도 다음 주에 넘지만 되는 거 이제 다음 주에 로지거든요. 고지도 내서 수도에서 이제 다 고지도 내서 말이야. 감성 구원되나 내가 그렇지 집에 있나요? 내가
인터넷에 오면 다 주도는 따다 하고.
내가 배울 줄도
인터넷에 오면
그에 평소 재산주 농주에 있나요? 농주면 뭐가 돼요?
저도 다다.
재산 뭐가 배웠지? 내가 배웠지. 단 조르시 지유선 내서 조르시도 돼.
No, I don't. They do
소무시 활동을 하시죠.
broadcasting on social media and
Yeah, but you're not recording it.
I'm not recording.
그에 평소
Broadcasting.
몸에 비어지는 인생은 되어지 우리는 단지 소상하지. 딱 가서도 이 몸에 안에 있는 몸이
But it will be up.
근데 늘 그거에서
Yeah, but the thing is, I record it then again from the social media.
시즌이 되는 늘 주무시는 때문에
How can you do that?
There's some website. You just put the link of that video on that website. They will download it for you.
And what's the website?
지슈죠. 제선지 내가
Download.
Facebook video download.
Okay. No, good.
일단 늘 제가 잠깐 치면 내가 내가 시원 좀 이한 뒤지가 루시가 신발이야 인상적으로 야인 인상적이니까 다른 인상적인 거면 땀을 주는 내가 잠들에 콜리지 지어다 하여튼 이제 선물을 쏘아 지금 통으로 진짜 잠들이 냐와다 이다다 잘라서 같은 데 먹을 만지게 한들이 야야 도매네 근데 참을까 내가 내가 뭐가 내가 와이파이 좀 좋아하다 야야 잔지가 양분도 소소 많지 교통이 너무 많던데 대단히 뭐가 재미는 영어로 재미 고샤점이 재미 프로그램이 있어 고치 수수료에서 만드는 랜드에서 영화이다 도도 대체로 좋은 값으로 랜드에 시작하면서 자가 같이 지금 이제 다 되겠습니다. 랜드에서 만드는 미국에서 하와이에서 타이에서 인지 지단 도와마 느끼다가 파다람이 진짜 거죠. 로드트리프에서 파다람이 다리지. 다 하와이에 사람들과 같이 파다람 대화하다 수가마다 수행하신 수행을 어떻게 인상은 미도에서 아이도에서 아메이지도에서 어떻게 소소도에서들이 다담보 미도에서 사진을 지금 되지 제도에 가이도에 나이도에 치료도에 도와줘도에 그래도 제도에 뇌물 세미니 도에서 도스죠 다티지는 뇌물 세미니 도렌지야 민들을 하신 똑똑한 돈에 세야지 이어를 시진지만 돌아지 대단하다 민들을 제도에 저 제도에 있자 내가 뇌물도 마치듯이 네 제주도다 라면집이나 제주도 챙기면 돼. Tadi, dinyu 제가 유명하고 있지. 미래를 사람들이 tadi 이제 제가 다시 뭐지? 제가 다시 동행된다. 매장 아니면 도와주면 제가 동행지어줘야. tadi 도와주면 동행 지어줘야. tadi 도와줘야. 이쪽에 뭐가 가지고 있는 재물이야. 이쪽에 뭐가 가지고 있는 재물이야. 그러면 문제는 뭐지? 세상이 tadi tadi 다만 이제 우리 타도당 중들 이제 나서 내가지 하이도는 담이 다른 중들 대가를 세진다 소리가 엔테장도 시대의 왕기 엔테주주 근데 하이 나왔지跟典型的是，他也真正的在，而且他没现在也是人人。
Lord Amen. Oh,
first session at least.
진실로 남도 방세들이 이기적인 같은 것들이 간단히 생각이 있네. 정가연으로 지내야 삼년치 모르지 공부를 걸다 류이면 바탕 생각을 이제 그래야 돼. 개심시하는 거지. 류이면 바탕 생각을 매용야기 개심 지시시 가르쳐는 연구를 했잖아. 지금 tunjuk 인도지 공부 많이 했지. 동단 지도나 때리는 때문에 아니 연구가 다 진짜로 넘도 없어요. 그러면 조심히 이제 넘도 할 때는 유목은 남람하고 딱 먼저 지내야 어떻게 지내는 거야. 인자 이제 시사하고 지내는方法 들어있는 산등 공부 정신 면상을 산등 공부에 유추를 산소하는데 인자 제 산등 남자 때문에 중간에 신내 문제 시도 손야지 지단을 지지 아버트 junju나 junju기 요 참면나 답변이 손센데 바이오를 요다 시신 전신이 요라서 대표는 시사시 친구들 그리고 단지 거기에 시사시 친구들이 친구들이 된다. 아버지 예수님 시원해 인간이 가사주 무슨 미신나 종유에 예진주주 무슨 대소리야 대가들 연전의 글지 알리방 수도 세우지 손님이다. 문에다 삼진 공연지는 준주 우승을 인지해야지 매듭을 하지. 지금 이제 동안 있었다. 진로는 또 이렇게 시도 실제 손. 단 지금 이제 단 진로는 또 이 지단 방송을 유명한 요지리티 나는 또 저 뇌의 관계 가서 좀 해야지.
때문에 신규나무의 제리야 요니나 사전 먼저 성공하고 신행군의 출가 신행군의 출제 세수사는 어떠지 시사없이 송영하네 뒷마송가 있나요? 제서 또 고리아 제바지 매우리 디멘션도 벽인제제수 사제점에 걸려 도문도 많이 지는 두배 선텐스 장주시 신지 두배 선텐스 뭐 있네 마음 매버스로 지르바 제전 신내지 두배 선텐 날랍수스 송고야기 존재 가리나 디 시그웨치레 다가난신 던테네마 리운디 숑하만치디 배차상으로지 다시냠지군에 생경주들이 데네야 도바 셴바지 가리어르시는 준주군남이야 리우담부 리우가만트즈나나 장주생 송의 최대 제벌 송요래 아버트에 인디고 그란도스마 반지니 시베거리아 장주심 송의 최기 요 소르도 유대하지 디캅소 다시 년지 군주 디제디 시사부제네 간다르다 장주심 페인 때문에 걸리네래 되네 장주심 송의 값이 이네래 대주거리아 다시 년지 군주 디마 송부제네 삼den지 류거라 다시 년지 군배주 송고야 기준된 거리는 질 숑셴베 중시마 반지베 값수 장주 신지베 줄 신지 쪽에 송수 조동년수 되는 신지의 주발 럽주스 다 신지의 주발 럽주를 레베 qab리야 진바는 고수제 진바 수진수가 삼대 진 퍼신주 다 있는 퍼신주 양은 퍼신주 도용 없이 어떤 데지만 용락 수로 된지 난 디나라 준주로 주유에 나네 수바 삼대 준주 시럽 zam마도베 퍼신 셴바치디 대걸 코랑기 센도네 퍼신바 들라베츠 양송요 말이 저한테 숑기 고린 지단들이야 미세기 그거주제 덴덴 유고야지 띵한저 리버스나나 셰서브스케 메도와 띵자 디 신주난고야디 개침부했음도 숑지 고차상한지 차버제발이야 숑디 rumshidi tendenjene ko rumshima kandeshi ayubati chengoyajire 제선 rumshi yabuji yube kalya dine sheda yananga iguni shebe kale sheda yananga gati tada pigi chubuji yungure shungu rumshi sebu mebina sheda yananga bodiye 잘 커버를 잘로 그래. 나버트에 제섭지기 사제디 패질 여기 제가 처음에는 사제 제슈 식사슈지 임바디 나렌 제뉴에 리버스난다 제서 사제 제슈를 현재 쉬우치기 슝부 동식이 된다 따다 로야게 사제 잠단 야우슈지 난도가 저던 대가서 나주 제마죠 나래 휴지 신기민도 삼den지 리오디 숨베깔라 투모마임베 신엔지 두베스 제네티시티 자르고야디 신엔을 미치거네 투모메 신엔지 두베스 송고야 기준된 가리나 슝코랑은 하나 신의 두배 최대 제시와 매버체 어떤 인도 거리야. 때 조심하시는 때비는 자신 거리야. 자신 지위로 생각을 하시는 신의 공부하신 디도 신의 공부하신 들으시 자신 거리야. 무엇인의 성유도 This sort of situation compromising some area, something should see something which is something should have bones Dhyana Loteya. There's a dinner, does it include to meditate on the equalization? 다시는 이거는 로잔수디 장상원은 좋아하는 제가 다다는 신 개박하시기 다시는 이거는 로장의 뜻을 돈이 더 많은 뜻안에 장주 심지를 지어서 양다 신중은 다는 수가 다디 처버도 유지 말이지 언든지 임베트 송근야 배지 유베트도 다시는 이거는 로잔수디 무슨 신대수로 치네 제단다 루루구 숑구나로래 렌지정왕 쯤에 루루 숑구나로래 다시는 이거데 용구 요래데 딱 냠스는 배츠 제시 제바 준준의 소원한 신식 개발시행기 숑로 만종원래 내내 인자 용라리아 다시는 이거는 로존수디 시월라니 주베스 시월라이 맹한 지고르바 다 시월라기 송야기 겁디 데 상당히 리우 겁디리 다티네마만 다마 단 숑르무시자리 다 숑디나 챔비치 고카보에 망고치리 말에 도만 주바 망고 용데기도 and laboratory 다시님지 단tilwe 리버크죠 되서 잠들다는 양한서 줄에나는 도그버 란첸 다세담이나 가시에 신상제 가보야 용세 같은데 요아래 다데서 저기는 숑을 줄에 말이 마도인자 네 스테이지 마도 전쟁 치네 루드컬 잠리티 연진네 세부지 마도베 전쟁기 저주가 라커부터인지 용세버리지 제제디 돌샤네 단디 센삼남베 겁리야 냠낸 소르 쟁엔 심바이나니 Ranglola Campembe, Tijeto, Dodu Jamne, the Dolman, Chinchan Jerry. Yan Shenchimolia Moneda Ribashi Tane to some things about the judgment Nangan Chimbaina, then the Yana Yanto Choriwata, Rabarism Jimansimbachene, Yana and Shinju Nangueta, and Jonah Churana Zogueta, until Kachimburisha. That's such a one channel. Sumba Shinecher Gumbetula Ni Dashan Yamba Gumbetsuda, Dashin Jivetsulo, that Tambo Dashan Yamba Gumbetula Ni, Dortamba Jebashevas, that Dinangi, Tamon Dortamba 3. Dilla Sobe number ye, Wimbe Yunken Sam Jene, Namdo Nyor Shiwadang, Janjus in the Gumbarchas. Namdo Nyor Shiwadang, Janjus in the Gumbarchas, Sumba Matobe, Dema Sajid in Gutu Dukalan, Namdo Nyor Shiwadang, Shines in the Gumbarchas, Masumbati, Delia, Janjus in Gumbara. Mexican Sumberwa industry. Tilla Sobe number is that Tilla Sobe number going to Chin Simbacheti. You wouldn't go to ne Shulova Tambune, Shulova Jajim Pat Yana Jajebat. Then the condition of Nashi thinking Zinji.
They are considered, they are mentioned by the word in adversaries of the Body. They are not mentioned at the adversaries of the enlightened mind. They are in accordance with the outline of the outline. It really seems that the text and being explained are on the basis that the text is really going through the methods of meditating, calming the body. Then with regards to there have been many detailed explaining how to give up on the adverse factors, such as those and so on. And so on second line of verse 88 means there could be many other things. Then by having thought of excellent qualities of solitude, mundane gathering and wrong conceptualization, these two are to be removed, and to remove, when you remove them, what are the good or excellent qualities they are. So these have already been dealt or gone over in the body. As earlier we have mentioned that even the chief of the solicitor would not find this. This is in the desire and those who enjoy the object of desire, those people who is the most powerful and most that is ruling over all the object of desire is the king of the celestials, the Indra. So this is of the object of desires. It has no shortage and no destitution of object of desire. So by relying on solitude, that very feeling or comfort, even the Indra would not be able to find. So these such qualities of the solitude one should think in one's mind in order to subside the conceptual thought. One should meditate on meditative concentration, and with that verse number 88, as regards to the way of explaining that, there are several ways of explaining this line. This conceptual thought subside, and the word end is the linking and meditating the enlightened mind. So the conceptual thought subsided, that refers to calm the body, and enlightened mind is the equalizing and exchanging self with others, where the last two lines seem to say that the counterparting and enlightened mind are two separate things. This is one way of explaining the last two lines of the verse 88. That the third line explains the meditation on counterparting, and the last line explains the meditation on equalizing exchange and serve with others. Then with other valid or the standard qualified Tibetan commentaries, the word conceptual thoughts are side. Then these three words are explained as the adversaries of counterparting, which have been earlier mentioned in the earlier verses. These become subsided when you are in solitude. Then at that time, so the end would end in the last line. It also can refer to the time according to Tibetan grammar. So by thinking on the qualities of the solitude, all the conceptual thoughts subside, then you meditate enlightenment mind. So like when the sun rises and then one go to walk and so forth. So once the conceptual thoughts subside, then you meditate on enlightened mind. And also in Bodhisatvacarya-avatara's commentary, also the explanation is mentioned in that way. First you think about solitude, you rely on solitude, and you stay away from the mundane gathering and give up of the wrong conceptual. When the wrong conceptualization has subsided, then you meditate on bodhicitta and enlightened mind. That is what's mentioned in the Bodhisatvacarya-avatara's commentaries. Therefore, conceptual thoughts, when they're subsided, then only you meditate on enlightened mind. That is the understanding of the last two, and this is very much in accordance with the Indian text. And in Tibetan commentary, especially of the recent Tibetan commentary, the third line is applied to counterparting, and the fourth line is applied to equalizing and extending self with others, and then to the enlightened mind. There's a way of explaining that way also of the last two lines of the verse number 88. Then the next one, verse 89, from the very first, meditate with effort, equalizing oneself with others. Then how should one meditate on counterparting? The way to do that is shown in the verse 89. First, you should meditate on equalizing oneself with others. Since happiness and sufferings and equalize, all should be regarded as to oneself. That is the reasoning applied last two lines of verse 89. We want happiness, we do not want suffering. That is to all sentient beings, whoever it is equal to all sentient beings. For those who have mind, if it is a being that is sentient, that has mind, they want happiness, do not want suffering, that is equal. Therefore, to equalize oneself and others should be guarded as oneself from the very first. So before you exchange, you should equalize oneself with others. Since happiness and suffering are equalized, all should be guarded as to oneself. What matter one should meditate on that? If that is the question, then the answer is since the happiness and suffering are equal, to recognize happiness and suffering and to consider happiness to be wanting and to attain that, and suffering is seen as to be not wanted and therefore get rid of. This is equal to all sentient beings. So therefore one should guard all as oneself. All should be guarded as to oneself, yourself and all. If you guard only yourself and neglect others, if you try to remove your suffering, if you do not try to remove others' suffering, then it does not become equal of oneself with others. So we're still going to verse 89, last two lines. Here I have, I forgot to mention, what has been covered yesterday in those verses, and here at present in the Jezebel's the way the outlines are presented when this is mentioned, then with the actual wording of the root text, it is important that the actual verses are considered, focused upon. That is important too, to focus on the wording of those texts. In the linking part, in the chapter on the meditative concentration, if you look at the with regard, it seems that there's mention about the counterbanding part with the chapter 8 at the very beginning, verse number 1, the linking about the 4th chapter, knowing that a special insight that has come to body would completely eliminate affliction at first, and come to body that is achieved by enthusiasm at not being attached to the mundane. Verse number 4. So therefore, with regards to the counterbanding, what becomes the adversary to counterbanding, to be attached to sentient beings, to be attached to the external material things and services. So when you look at them, it seems that the verses do instruct on the way to meditate, on a way how to meditate on counterbanding, but when it comes to the actual verses thereafter, we see almost there's no actual verses with the wording pertaining to the meditation counterbanding. Then the next part, all should be guarded as to oneself, verse number 89. With regards to meditation on equalizing and extending self with others, there are two parts showing in brief, and so this part is a brief part showing briefly verse 88 and 89, there's two parts. Then the second is explaining extensively, bottom of page 43 of second text. There are four main subparts under explaining the meaning of meditating, equalizing yourself with others, the manner of meditating or equalizing yourself with others, the benefit of meditating thus. If equalizing yourself with others become familiar, it can be generated, and so there are these four subparts explaining the meaning of meditating or equalizing yourself with others, what it means and what is understood by meditation on equalizing and extending yourself with others. The second is the manner of meditating on equalizing and extending yourself with others. Once you have understood the meaning of that, then how one should put it into implemented practice. That is the second part. And if you do meditate and implement in practice, what is the benefit that is shown by the third subheading? Then the fourth is, if you do equalize and extend yourself with others, then that very in your mind, that recognition, awareness of the sameness of yourself with others can be produced, can be generated. Many people think, oh, it's not possible to equalize self with others, but it is possible. Then the first is to explain the meaning of the meditating, equalizing yourself with others. Verse number 90. Many be the divisions into hands and so on, yet just as they are one with body to be guarded, likewise are happiness and suffering of the very wandering beings, all like me equally want happiness. So that is the equalizing self with others. How one should understand the meaning of that is, with the parts of the body, there are feet, there are the hand, there's the head. There are many parts to the body. With the animals, there are tails. There is a tail if it's the insect. There are many limbs, so there are many various kinds of the parts of the body according to this place. Anyway, all of them they grasp onto as mind or I to one's aggregate, to have grasping as it is me, and they think that parts of the body are mine, the hands are mine, the feet are mine, the head is mine. All the parts of the body the person thinks or sentient being thinks as its own. So one has such a recognition as regards to the parts of the body. Likewise, with regards to sentient beings too, with the celestials, humans, and the asuras, and the kumbharas, and those sentient beings, the realm of torment. There are many different types of sentient beings, but they all, with regards to the happiness and suffering, with regard to aspiration, that there's no difference. Therefore, because there's no difference as regard to aspiration for happiness and getting rid of suffering because of being so being focused on all variety of sentient beings, just as you grasp at your body as your all other sentient beings' body, also you should place the awareness that they are mine. If you have such an awareness, then all of their happiness will become equal to be achieved by you, and all their sufferings will become equal to be removed. Therefore, equalizing oneself with others, that very thought of equalizing self with others, if you have trained and produce of a high experience and perfection in your mind, then the feeling of happiness, what it happens, if it is an embodied being, if it is a sentient being, you equalize as equally wanting happiness, equally not wanting suffering, and all their sufferings are to be removed by me. All their happiness are to be accomplished by me. All sentient beings' happiness are to be accomplished by me. All sentient beings' sufferings are to be removed by me. What we normally, we have some cherishing thought, and when you don't have the thought cherishing others, then when it is your suffering you want to remove, if it is your happiness you want to achieve, while with others' happiness and others' suffering you do not think of removing and achieving. You think as if you don't have responsibility with regard to them. So this is because from beginning's rebirth we are very much accustomed to that. Now we have to turn it upside down or other way around. Your limbs and so forth, which are different types, parts of the body. They are very much part of the body that you consider to be yours because of being part of the body. All of them are to be guarded from pain and to be provided comfort to all parts of the body. Like that, all sentient beings of the samsara are equally sentient beings, and being sentient beings, that very reasoning becomes the basis why you need to remove their suffering, and you need to really remove their suffering, and you need to achieve or accomplish happiness for them. To train one's mind in that way is the meaning of equalizing oneself with others. Then the second subheading part of the earlier part, the manner of meditating on equalizing yourself with others, with regard to, there are two subparts of the page 44. Top part, refuting it is not right for the sake of discarding and taking up of suffering and happiness, explaining the reason it is right to meditate on as the same. The argument of the calm is presented first. If to take happiness and to give up suffering for yourself and for others, it cannot be possible for both you and others. If that is so there is a calm or the argument brought about, so one tries to respond to that. The taking up of the happiness and giving up of the suffering is right. It is so that means to give up to refute the argument that they are not same. So the first verse number 91. So calm, it cannot be same. So if the other person, then the calm is not someone else, but your mind gives the argument. We regularly, when we have not trained our mind on equalizing exchange yourself with others, in our mind, when you think of yourself, there is a mind of cherishing, caring for yourself. With regards to the others, you have the attitude of neglecting them, ignoring them. If you see happiness, you want to achieve that for yourself. To achieve that happiness for others, you think it is not your business. If there's suffering, you think if it's for you, you need to remove. If it is suffering for others, you think it is not to be removed. You think you don't have much responsibility, we have such a tendency. This is what normally we do witness. For example, if there are 3 or 4 people together in one house, in one room, if there's an earthquake and the roof is collapsing, then all of them to go out together, that very thought, it is there equally with all 3 or 4. Instead, then to ignore others, but rather for yourself to escape first, you think in that way. So instead, at that point, it would be difficult for someone to say, "Oh, you please go ahead, please you go first." You don't. It will be very difficult for people to think and say in such a way, because that is our attitude, normally our habit. The verse number 19. So my sufferings do not harm others' bodies. Verse 91 responds, well, yet by clinging at as one, those sufferings thus unbearable. Likewise, sufferings of others do not descend upon me, yet they are unbearable to them because they cling on to as theirs. So this part, if you look at straight away on the wording, it's not that easy to understand. It may appear like that, but it's not so. Your sufferings to other people's do not harm other people's body. That being the case, but that suffering, but it's a suffering that's going to happen to you. Therefore, you consider it as unbearable. If that is the case, then with regard to other sufferings, when they do not descend on you, they do not fall on you, they do not happen to you, yet others to be considered as yourself, to be having an attitude of thinking of others, then you feel it unbearable. Your sufferings, whether it harm to others or not, because of it being your suffering, you try to remove it. Just as you try to remove it, that very effort you put, what is the reason why you do so? That is because of your subjective thought, considering or grasping at yourself. Because of that, you want to remove your suffering. Now, with others' suffering, why you do not remove, why you do not attempt to remove, the reason why it comes down, because others' suffering do not harm you. Others' suffering do not apparently harm you, because of that reason you do not try to remove others' sufferings. You do not do it at the moment. But such others, so if you have the awareness that others are you, if you have awareness of others as you, then the wanting to remove others' suffering would come naturally. The need for awareness, there's no need to put effort to have awareness that I need to remove others' suffering. It will come naturally because you have considered others as you. Anyway, with other sentient beings, in your appearance, in your perspective, you do not see any difference. When you equalize with others, when you exchange yourself with others, it does not mean that you become others become you. That does not mean, but rather in terms of considering dear, in terms of cherishing, just as you consider yourself to dear. If you have such a thought to others as a dear, then others' suffering will become same as your own suffering. And because there is the thought wanting your suffering, you will also have the thought wanting to remove others' suffering, will become same. Therefore, it is not incorrect to be the equality of the wanting to adopt happiness and to remove suffering, that to remove your suffering and not remove others' suffering. It is equal to be saying that these are not equal if you bring such an argument. But the answer to that argument is that it is possible to have such thing possible. The way it is possible is you do not differentiate between yourself and others, just as you, because you consider now yourself to be cherishing, to be valuable. If you have such a thought similar towards others as a cherishable as a dear, then as you do not bear your own suffering because you have your clinging to yourself, that is called. Likewise with others, when you have the thought thinking they are you, then their suffering being unbearable to you would also come about in the same way. This is what is being advised. Your suffering do not harm others, and your awareness of thinking yourself as cherishable and you feel unbearable suffering, if that is true, then others' sufferings, although they do not descend on you, but others are to be seen as yourself. If you have such awareness, if you have such a thinking of others or you, then you will have the ability to remove others' suffering and to be feeling unbearable about others' suffering. So this is then the second is it is right to meditate on as they sing. So this has again three parts with the positive design, establishing entitlement, moving the door. First is the explaining extension. So this has again three subparts: positive design, establishing entitlement, remove the doubt that equalizing self with others cannot be meditated upon, of which the first is the verse number next verse, I should remove others' suffering because their sufferings, verse number 93, just as my sufferings I should benefit others because they are sentient beings just as my body. So this part is because it's positing or presenting the reasoning, just as a dialectical language were to explain that way. Then other sentient beings suffering be the object of our argument. It is wanted removed by me because it is suffering like my own suffering. So you can have it presented in a debate, syllogism, in that way. I should remove others' suffering because they're suffering just as my sufferings. I should benefit others because they're sentient beings just as my body. The meanings are the same way they are presented. Other sentient beings be the thing to discuss, it is to remove because it's suffering. The other sentient beings suffering without putting in the syntax of syllogism, but word by word mean why I should remove other sentient beings suffering. The reason is because it is suffering. If it is suffering, it has to be removed. That there is not a suffering, some sort of suffering that should not be removed. Why? The reason you need to remove your suffering because you think it is suffering. So like your own suffering, you should remove others' sufferings. Likewise, with regard to other sentient beings' happiness, I should accomplish because they are happiness, for example, my happiness. So that is putting in the dialectical syllogism in that way. So that is the same way of presenting the reasoning. Because it is suffering, it needs to be removed. That is the entitlement. Because it is happiness, it needs to be achieved, it needs to be accomplished, it needs to be obtained. That is the entitlement. That being so, that I should remove and I should not some others to be discriminated. That very talk is later, will come later in the entitlement, established entitlement. This talk will again come in verse number 94. And the second, the actual establishment of the entitlement. This has to the actual establishment of the entitlement. Middle of the page 44, second text in the outline. So how one establishes the entailment is verse number 94. The actual establishing of the entailment. When both I and others are the same in wanting happiness, what difference is there for me? Why then strive for my happiness alone? When both I and others are the same in not wanting suffering, what difference is there for me? Why then strive for my own removing of suffering? You can have that wording as well. Yourself and others both are equally wanting happiness. Is same. That is what is normally known. It is also directly visible, witnessable yourself to want happiness. Other person also want happiness. All sentient beings, as I think I mentioned yesterday, do want happiness, do not want suffering, and has the right to achieve happiness and have the right to remove suffering, have the ability to achieve happiness and have the ability to remove suffering. This is what we are all saying. This is holiness. Gives the advice that all sentient beings are equal in those three ways. So this is what is the reason presented in the text. If in the colloquial, worldly way of talking, or you might think it might be difficult to establish the entailment. But if you think deeply, it is easy to establish the entailment oneself. Others do equally want happiness. Then, whatever there are other differences, to be not working for others' happiness, to be working only for your own happiness. That is what's happening. Oneself and others both do want happiness. Because of such reason, there's no difference at all. But when it comes to actually achieving or working for happiness between yourself and others, whatever differences, why I only work for my happiness, why I do not work for others' happiness, that is one talk, one thing to look at. And then the second, when both I and others are saying not wanting suffering, what difference is there for me? Why then God myself, not others? Myself and others equally do not want suffering being sent. Myself and others, whatever the differences there is, to guard your own suffering and to not guard others' suffering. Why not guard myself, not others? Why then guard myself, not others? With both of them, the meaning is explained in brief. The actual establishing of the entailment, the meaning to summarize, if it is happiness, one needs definitely has to achieve. It is suffering, one definitely needs to remove. If you want to say it is difference of the first self and others, there's no need to work like that. If that is the argument, then the response is that myself and others equally do want happiness, equally do not want suffering. Then what other justification there is of a difference to be not wanting for others or happiness, to be not wanting to remove others' suffering? So this is the counter-response question put back to the argument, the calm. So that is the actual, then the specifics of that. So removing its obstacles, verse number 96. So removing its obstacles, see if there are any fallacies that is to be refuted. That's what is meant by removing its obstacles. Verse number 96. Because the sufferings with them do not harm me, so I wouldn't guard if yourself, whatever differences there are, to accomplish your happiness, to not achieve happiness for others, to remove yourself but not for others. If there's a question, what is the difference, if that is the answer given? Because the sufferings with them do not harm me, so I wouldn't guard them. If to others, when suffering is happening, they do not harm me. The others' suffering do not harm me, there's no suffering to me out of them. Then I should not protect from others' suffering. If you say that, then the response of that, then since future sufferings too do not harm us, so why guard from them? If that is your reason, then others suffering do not harm you because that reason. If you do not remove others' suffering, then others' happiness do not help you, then you should not work for others' happiness. If that is the argument you're bringing, then Shantideva gives the answer. Then the thing would be that there's suffering to come in next year, in future, that would not harm you now. Then because it doesn't harm now, then the suffering that is to occur next year, we should not working to remove that suffering of next year. So with regard to the answer that has been given is the reason, then since future suffering do not harm so and so forth. The verse number 97. Wrong is the concept thinking out the experience it, for the dead too would be another being, and the reborn too would be another being. The reason that is to happen in the future, the suffering that is to happen in the future, if it needs that the reason why it needs to be removed from now, because it is a suffering that is going to fall on me in future because of such concern that I would experience it one thinks of removing from now. If that is the point being made, then that is wrong. Wrong is the concept thinking the future, to thinking the one going to experience the future sufferings me. That is not factual. For the dead too would be another being, and the reborn too would be another being. In this life, the negative actions that is accumulated, and the person after accumulated, then person dies, that very person, then in future rebirth. Due to the result of this last bad karma and the experience of the suffering to be experienced by the next rebirth person, so these two persons will be different persons. It is not in terms of the continuity, but in terms of the moment and in terms of time. The two are being the person who dies after having done bad karma in this life, so that person has ceased that is momentary disintegration. Then the person that's going to reborn next rebirth, that is a new person, because that being the case, then the difference of your oneself and other, the very thought of the self and others are different. If you have such a thought, then the person who is in this life who does the committed bad actions, and the other person that is going to experience the result of suffering in terms of time, the two persons are separate. Because at the time the person did the accumulation of bad karma, that person has gone, and the person that is going to experience the result, that is a person going to reborn new. So the two persons are different. That is the reason put back to the argument presenter, because being separate, each other's suffering need not be removed. So that very assertion, and this is the argument, is the response given called the reasoning of the sameness. So here Jazarabija says here, please look into the footnote. It is not the meaning of the text referred in terms of the ultimate truth. Sometimes of the texts are in the context of the conventional truth, sometimes in the context of the ultimate truth. So if you do debating without looking into the context, there will be a lot to be debated about. It may appear to be so. Then the next verse number 99, if when the suffering of something were to be removed verily by itself, a foot's suffering wouldn't be by hand, or it would have to guard it. So another reason of similar thing is applied. If others' suffering do not harm you and others' happiness do not happen on you, then you should not achieve others' happiness. You should not remove others' suffering. That is the reason then. At the time when a person, whatever suffering a person experiences, that person should try to remove itself by himself or herself, but rather if it's not to be removed by some other person, if when a suffering or something were to be removed it's very by itself, then a food suffering would not be by a hand. Why? It would have to guard that. Verse number 98. Now here the similar reason being presented back to the person bringing the argument is that at the time when the person who is experiencing the suffering, that very suffering, that very person experiencing the suffering has to guard from that suffering. No other person should guard it. If that is valid, if that argument is valid, then the food suffering wouldn't be by hand. If your food is injured and there's a pain, then there's no need for the hand to remove the food's pain and so on, because the food suffering is not experienced by the hand. So whichever experiences the pain and suffering, that itself should remove it. So that is the reasoning of similar reasoning put back to the person in the argument. Verse number 98, we are still on. The next, though not feasible yet engaging, is by grasping itself. Well, whatever inappropriate grasping itself and others by, that should be removed as best as one can. So this part, this is also, it is another calm and removing of the calm part. If something that are unrelated between each other, then other suffering to be removed by another being, that being removed, if it is inappropriate, though not feasible, if for example the food's pain is to be removed by hand, if, let's say it's not feasible, what is being feasible and being presented is by grasping at self. A person grasping at self, that very habituation in the mind of grasping at self, as the past and future lives, past and future years, feet and hand. So these are by one person to be grasping at mind because of having such presence of the mind of grasping. Therefore, if it is worthy, it is visible. So that is the reason that calm the argument person puts the question. The future lives suffering to be removed in this life, and the fate's pain should be removed by the hand. Why they need to remove is because with these both persons both have the grasping has the mind of grasping at the self. Likewise, and the thing there is the notion of self or I. So if that is the question being put, then they are grasping at the independent self and so forth. So that is inappropriate. Well, whatever inappropriate grasping itself and others be, that should be removed as best as one can. Verse number 99, such an independent self and the mind grasping at the independent self, it becomes the root of the samsara. Yourself and all others' sufferings are things to be removed, become the source for all the sufferings whatsoever. Therefore, to be grasping at self as the independent self, that very thought needs to be removed. So this needs to be applied in both ways. That very thought of grasping at self, because of the difference between oneself and others, and that very thought of grasping at self in terms of the past and future lives and so forth, to be establishing as visible and invisible, that is proven in both ways. If not, though not visible yet, engaging is by grasping at self. Anyway, that would be okay on that part of verse 99. 9. Not feasible is applied to both features suffering to be removed now and the feet pain to be removed by a hand that is not feasible, and others suffering to be removed by your suffering. Other suffering need not be removed by you, and others' happiness need not be accomplished by you. That is not infeasible. Both of these, where the root comes down with these two, infeasibility is the grasping at the self, eco-grasping at independent self. So the very mind of the eco-grasping is to yourself and to others, the source of all that is unwanted. So it should be removed. This grasping. Then the earlier first, the third, removing the doubt, removing its obstacle. So this part, the establishing of actual establishing of the entitlement and removing its obstacle and so forth are completed. In terms of the ultimate, So the positive sign is completed, establishing the entitlement is completed, removing the doubt. We are now on the third part, page 44, middle part. So these two are not separate because they are a separate person and they are unrelated. Each person, same person, body and hand are the same feeling, and the collection and continuity are of the same parts. So it is right to remove each other's sufferings and so forth. So from another angle, what to say? Feeds pain to be removed by a hand, the reason for that, and the future suffering to be removed at present in this life. The very reasoning is again from another point. It is presented, and through such reasoning, removing the doubt that equalizing self with others cannot meditate upon. That doubt is removed through such way of thinking. Verse number 100. Continuity and collection of falls like a garland, army, and so on. Since that who has suffering is non-existent, then whose would be owned by that these sufferings? In future lives and the earlier past lives of the same person's continuity of consciousness coming uninterruptedly, so they are of the same continuity of consciousness, both these being person of the previous life and coming to this life. Likewise, feet and the hands are of one person's parts of the bodies, each person's body's collection part. So therefore, whether it is a happiness suffering, there is the same experience coming together. Yet that being the case, yet the answer response being given by the author here is that they are same continuity, that they are part of the same collection. If that is the argument being put by other side, then continuity, the response of that continuity and collection are merely imputed, or they're like garland which is made of many beads. When many beads are put together becomes a garland, and army is composed of many soldiers. They're merely labeled by conceptual thought, but if you look for after each beads are removed, there's no garland to be found. After each army or soldiers are taken away, there's no solid army to be found, since that who has suffering is non-existent. A person with suffering, a single person, to be inclusive to that person's concept of I or self, that very suffering to that person, the person that has a suffering and which is inclusive to that person's conscious self, that person's continuity on the path. There's no solid continuity of path because the person itself, they are independent person to have independent happiness and suffering, get that to be controlling in such a way is not. Then whose would be owned by that? The person is not owned by anyone, happiness is not owned by anyone, suffering is not owned by anyone. Because of such reasoning, verse number 100, we're going through that still. Therefore, which person with is suffering to a suffering would own it. If you look for that, you wouldn't find. Next is that there's no owner of suffering, verse 101, or just without specification, that there's no independent owner to a suffering, then all sufferings become same without difference. Nominally, with dependence on one another. In conventionally, nominally there is if there is suffering nominally, like there is nominally one self and others, so the suffering that is existing nominally, then it is something that need to remove. But in the ultimate truth, that self and mind and continuity and collection, there is not any to be found in the ultimate truth. Therefore, what you assert do not stand true. But nominally things do exist, that things are very much in the nature of being related or depend on one another. Therefore, one's has suffering and others suffering, one's happiness and others' happiness do stand valid. Therefore, on the basis from the part of the object of designation, because existing would depend on another. If it is to be removed, it is equally to remove. It is to be accomplished. We need to accomplish all. There's no room for discriminate to be separating. So we have tea and break now. Offering mandala in gratitude of the teachings of Mandal, offering of the tea.
드린다가
live long, and the benevolent activities to flourish forward in all the world. Throughout, there will be subsiding of the destitution of the degenerate times, and the Tibet's issue prevail quickly for such a purpose, and especially in order to move sentient beings to impermanence. The great hold of the teaching of the yellow had said which wishes to be sublime, fulfilled, and to have unmistaken re-emanation to quickly appear, and the deceased the living, the Trisur, Labram, and all the staff members, and the Taiwan Dhamma Center, Taiwan Jerusalem family, and the translator, and for the obstacles to be removed and their Dhamma aspiration to be fulfilled for such purpose. To Recolopson, Labrang has to ease Sangha members 500 rupees cash offering is offered, and at the teaching congregation extensive meal is offered for the whole day, and the living Kachu Gyalung Namso Dorji, the deceased two parents, Gyalung Tashipaltan, Chunze Tashilhaja, Ajun, and the other sentient beings, but their bad karma to be purified to attain enlightenment. The living Yeshipunso, Sedendroga family, Chambathorji family, Yeshitsen family, Yudun family, Dejin family, Ong Sik Chung, and Tenzin Jogal to be recovered from illness, for the living sentient beings to have Dhamma wish aspiration fulfilled. A tea offering is offered at the teaching congregation, and 50 rupees to each Sangha member cash offering. The living Switzerland resident, Tsawa Tenzin, and others together for the deceased. Mother Thorn relative Subdan Sanjay and three brothers, Samdhong Dogoyutan, and younger brother Pemat Setem, and son Tashit Setem, and all the deceased to attain enlightenment, and living Tsawa Tenzin, Ajoyula family, Tenzin Yangi family, for the remaining life to meaningful and Dhamma aspiration to be fulfilled. At the congregation, service offering to the congregation, and the living Dingar Dhangshar Yundan Gyatso, the deceased father Lakwatsari, mother Losan Chunzum, and the partner Chunzum, Saint Chumpel, and daughter Chunzum, and the other deceased sentient beings to attain enlightenment. Yundan Gyatso and Bomochudan Kasanti Shira Drama Tenzin Yul, Tambin, Wangil, Tenzin Kunsa, and others. They are living, remaining life to meaningful, and to have Dhamma aspiration fulfilled. A tea offering and 50 rupees cash offering is offered to each Sangha members. The living Loling Geshe Tuptin Temple, the deceased Siddhan Norba Konstantin, the living Onden Norba family, Yongan Druba family, Dorje Sambo family, Today Yudam family, Tenzin Kumban Sriman Zodwende Sambo, Tenzin Yudam, Chimyongmo, Mingyur, family and others. The remaining life to meaningful Dharma aspect to fulfill a tea offering and 20 rupees cash offering is offered. The living Canada resident Amal Hatum family tea, bread and 50 rupees cash offering is offered. The living Seru Samdhong family a tea and bread is offering is offered. The living Tsawang Dorji family, the living deceased Lame, Mboyambe Momo Tsering, the living Tsawang Dorji, DJ Putu, Samdhong Chunzum, Peshitrama, Mr. Putu, for their welfare, tea and bread is offered. The living Chunzum Dolkar house, the living Mother Labudama, Father Tenzin, son Tenzin, Pomus Sangmo, the daughters Sangmo for their welfare, remaining life to meaningful Dharma to aspiration fulfill a tea is offered. The living Tenzin Deki, the living Tenzin Gaden, Tenzin daughters for their welfare, a tea is offered. The living Farkandin family, a tea and bread is offered and donation of 1,000 rupees is offered. The living Gelsen has the deceased Nundun Somo, Momo Doyang, Tuten Rinchen Palmo, Rinchen Somo, Doyang, the living Rinchen Yang Trashipunzo family, Yang family, Ishitsum family, Tenzin Benzo, Nonsun, Jamalama family, Trashitsum family have for their welfare a tea is offered. Gishi Tenzin Dorji, living Gishi Tenzin Dorji, for all the related beings a tea is offered. The deceased, Chingang Chong, and the living Chin Chin Man Chin have offered a tea once. The non Losang Balmo, Tenzin Chazum, and for their welfare a tea is offered. The living non Losang Tenzin for the other relatives and so forth, the tea is offered. Tashi has for the deceased Bobo Sonum Chodar, the grandmother Kalsang Lamo and mother Ayang for their, and the living Dongden Sang, father to the and lost Nan Yanjing and family, Sang the Chege family, and for their welfare, a tea offering as a 20 rupees cash offering is offered. The living Gesong Chu for the deceased Aziz welfare, a tea is offered. The living Akatunme, the deceased Mother Tandin and Anka Menlo Thambum, and the living Nudup, and the Dhamma Center's disciples, and Yimatsomo family, Jingme family, Tenzin Dhamma family, Linkeye family for their welfare, a tea offering and tea Sangha member 50 rupees cash offering is offered. The living Dalgeshe Tempa Gelsen for the relatives of others, a tea offering and 10 rupees cash offering is offered. The living Mother Tsering family, the living Tsering from family, and then Jalsa family, Jimmy Singh family, DJ Dolkar family, Tenzin Jamba family, Tenzin Dolkar, Osan Chota, Mingmar Samje for the welfare. At the congregation, a lunch is offered. The living Gelsang family, Kyosam family, Noble family, Dejin family, Seja family, Seju family, Agi family, Chunzom family, Ngung Chunzom, for the welfare. Tea is offered, once is offered. The living, the nunnery, Domaling Gishima, second year, they have for the living, for the benefactors to have the aspiration to fulfill a tea offering towards the offering rupees 6,110. 6,110 is offered as donation towards tea offering. Lada Nunnery Gathering General Congregation to currently re-emanate quickly the living Malisi, Yejilha, good tree and other sentient beings, their Dhamma aspiration to be fulfilled for tea is offered, and to Sangha members 20 rupees cash offering is offered. The living Gyuto family, family have a tea offering is offered once, is offered. Gishiman Lawson, Gishiman Chuki, for the living Father Dorji Tashidoma, Mother Peregrines welfare, a tea is offered once. The living Gyalan Tupten has a tea is offered once. The living Nan Long Summa, for the living Long Summa, Father Pema Gyalpo, Mother Church, and other all related sentient beings welfare tea is offered. The deceased Kunjo Dulma and living Osampalden family for their welfare, a tea is offered and 10 rupees cash offering is offered. The living soul, Dejin Khan, the living Patipurati family, 5 members, Pate Horseshoe family, Liu Te Hongkong, and 4 family members, Fatimili, Gayam Chung, Pati Sahang. They have offered a tea and 300 rupees cash offering is offered. So in this way, the above mentioned benefactors, what is in their aspiration, Dhamma aspiration to be fulfilled, please direct extensively your dedication and words of truth. Prayer requesting His Holiness the Dalai Lama to kindly live long. Chebawe Dendam Eshet Namda Doje Donan Rejo Pabe Dendam Laja Dunjo Dabe Koze Meje Kaya Shadyolinje Dora Jinja Jinda Neo Duno Nedo Nimjara Chejo Nejora Zondo Nezo Amak Laja Dunjo Dabe Kanjin Koze Meje Jawa Jazoyane Dazu Rajan Jawa Kulgezebe Nido Tabara Sume Allahji Tile Kumbe Nabe Nyimbo Java Jijole Gedo Dedio Zode Gezo Gegu Chana Bemir Chila Diz Daso Ninge Suzo Da Gayende Şebe Kuyuza Jojo Gazo Da Meço Sece Gayece Tende Loğane Nage Lasan Da Beki Nende Prayer requesting laid Kadim Chisu Rinpoche to kindly live long. Leg bara domge amawe ni mara shuno ni ne tote penu domge ni modo shenye ge londo denz soge nobo jezo jase chen so chena de so do Shulog, Sheda Jud, Tambar Jud, Jango Jare Deng, Quinsham, Yemalai, Yase Cheles, Chegiapan, Chedu Zewa, Tenda Bo, Pembe Shigyo, Junde Tsende Zip, Samarvo, Jeba Lore, Shida Bai, Tanzon Chembe, Sade Rinje, Sade Lectures, Nyando Yinde, Zebe, Sanjundem, Demo, Nube Anish, Saria Taba, Pemi Anyendo Zung, Shawa. Keshe Debeze Jonza Chude Yandeze Yodo Sho Kunjo Zonto Denkas Danje Gaze Tanzo Denze Adre Soja Dage Resan Debendeze Sabe Menaje Onjoje Naye Kalay Naye Chembe Tunge Senye Nayonge Jezalan Shala Soai Chege Sege Toje Chonsez Offering request, offering long prayer requesting His Eminence Samdhong Rinpoche to kindly live long. Offering mandala and requesting for the teachings. So in this way, then now, with the misconception that the equalizing exchanging oneself with others cannot be done, that doubt is removed. Down the next is the summarization. Verse number 101, line 3 and 4, because its suffering should be removed. What would determine do here? There's no arguing why the suffering of all should be repelled. If they are to repel, they all should be repelled, else oneself too is similar to sentient beings. Earlier, what has been covered, because of being suffering, that it needs to be removed, that goes without saying. So because it's suffering, it needs to be removed. Verse number 101, verse 3 and 4, to be determining and differentiating, oh, these I should remove, these others should remove. There's no point in determining like this. Because it's suffering, because being suffering, it needs to be removed. That it is mine, it belongs to him or her, not to differentiate. There's no point in doing so. What would that do here? Second line, verse number 3, 101, line 3 and 4. So there's nothing to read. Because of what reason? Why? For what reason? Reading through the commentary, all sentient beings' sufferings should be repelled. There's no need to be questioning that. Because things, if it is suffering, you need to remove. Therefore, why to remove other suffering? Why need to remove all suffering? Everyone, there's no need to determine, or there's no need to be looking into that. If there's no arguing why the suffering of all should be repelled, if they were to be repelled, if they need not be repelled, then your suffering should not be repelled as well. Of all should be repelled if they were to be repelled. If your suffering has to be removed, if others are not to be, if all should not be repelled, then but yourself is also sentient beings, like other sentient beings suffering. It is same suffering as experienced by other sufferings, or the suffering they experience. Because therefore, to be considering yourself as dear and to ignoring and neglecting others, there's no reason to be doing so. So, as oneself too is similar to sentient beings. To remove others, to repel others' suffering, to repel one's suffering, you should not differentiate between yourself and others. Then the third is the forsaking the argument, verse number 103, which has two parts. It is not right by thinking on sentient beings suffering, a bodhisattva himself or herself would become under the control of others. The purpose of thinking on suffering, halfway down the page 44, it is not right that by thinking on sentient beings suffering, a bodhisattva himself or herself would become under the control. What argument comes about is a bodhisattva who is under thinking of others suffering, bodhisattva would be under the control of suffering. That is not right. And the second is that there is a purpose in thinking about sufferings. Then the first part is that it is not right the bodhisattva would become suffering. Verse number 103, calm. Through compassion there would be many sufferings, so why ensure to generate sufferings? Response, how could there be more sufferings in thinking of the wandering being's sufferings? Through compassion, when other sufferings are all to be taken as your own suffering, then there will be more suffering to you. Then for what reason, why you, instead of removing suffering, you are taking more suffering on yourself? If that is the question, the calm, the argument, then the response is that when the bodhisattva thinks about sentient being sufferings, then at that time of thinking about sentient being sufferings, it is out of compassion that there will be more suffering. Would not be so. Why there wouldn't be more suffering out of compassion? The reason for that is because due to compassion, the suffering, experience of suffering would be removed by thinking that all the suffering, that seeing others suffering, by very force of the suffering, as if taking upon your own self the suffering due to such awareness of the Bodhisattva's mind, the feeling of suffering, that very nature of feeling of suffering would be removed out of the Bodhisattva's mind. There's one way of explaining that way, and the other way of explaining verse number 3 is that by thinking out of compassion the suffering of others' suffering, that suffering of thinking of others' suffering out of compassion, that suffering is very little compared to the suffering of the torment realm. Realm of the torment. So in all the Indian Tibetan commentaries, there's a slight difference in the way of explaining this verse number 103. But in brief, what it means is out of compassion, due to compassion, when one feels unbearable about others' sufferings, that very thought of unbearable about others' suffering to a bodhisattva, that it would become more suffering to a bodhisattva. That is the argument. Then why would you take other suffering upon yourself? If that is the question, then the response by Shantideva is that how could there be more sufferings in thinking of the wandering being's sufferings, by thinking of the wandering being's sufferings out of compassion and takes upon, because there's willpower out of compassion, there will be no suffering. But out, or you can take the meaning when out of compassion, when one sees others suffering, that feeling of suffering on bodhisattva mind will be very minor experience of suffering compared to the sufferings being experienced by those in the realm of the torment. Then the second part is the purpose for thinking on sufferings, verse number 104. What are the purpose in thinking of suffering? If one suffering would make many sufferings gone, that suffering is rarely to be generated in oneself with others by one with compassion. Verse number 105. As such, even knowing the king's harm, Flower Moon Handsome did not remove his own suffering from making end the sufferings of many others. Sometimes, when you take upon others' sufferings out of compassion, through that, by thinking on suffering, if there is going to be more increase of suffering for the bodhisattva, then there are many occasions when, for others' welfare, one has to accept others' sufferings upon oneself. If one suffering would make many sufferings gone, for a bodhisattva, say an individual bodhisattva experiencing suffering, that very single suffering, if he could make remove suffering of many sentient beings, then as such, then one who has compassion, that bodhisattva who has compassion, such a suffering upon yourself, upon oneself, not only takes upon oneself, but also if it is to be transferred, would do so without or if it is to be generated in others. Therefore, if it becomes for a bodhisattva, an act becomes a means to accomplish others' welfare, then there are 7 non-virtuous actions of body and speech that are permitted for bodhisattvas to do. There are many texts that mention there is such exception case. So going through the verse 104 and going through the verse 105, these 2 verses. So for this part, with regards to the example, Bodhisattva Moon Handsome, that is the biography of Bodhisattva Supushpa Chandra, who knew that the king would harm him. He still, in order to remove the sufferings of oneself, the Bodhisattva did not choose for that. But why that is so is because by knowing there is the king's harm, verse number 105, to remove the sufferings of many other people, knowing so that the suffering of many others would be cancelled if the Bodhisattva chose to not mind of his own. suffering. This is from the king of Samadhi Raja Sutra, king of meditative concentration Sutra, where this is mentioned. The Tathagata Ratna Padma in there is mentioned that he has a long name, the Tathagata of that name during that time, who is a very superior, precious lotus. Many eons and many eons ago, there was a Buddha by that name. That Buddha not among the 1,000 Buddha of the fortunate eon, not of this, but before that. So such Tathagata, when that Buddha appeared in the world, at that time, when that Buddha's teaching was about to set, about to perish, then at that time, there normally with any Buddha's teaching, when its time is about to expire, there will be more and more harm to the teachings, and there will be less and less people upholding teaching. So there was at that time there was a palace called the Precious. There was a king by the name of the Viradatta, or the generosity of bravery, and who was of a great powerful kingdom, a great powerful king. At that time, the king among the kingdom, among its subject people, there were a problem of untimely rainfall, and there were, so at that time those with the wrong view said, the Bodhisattva, why this happens, because there are 7,000 Bodhisattvas in the area, so the rain gods have become disturbed. So the king then banished the 7,000 bodhisattvas out of the palace. At that time, there was a bodhisattva called the Moon Handsome, who was training on the bodhisattva practices. He took the 7,000 bodhisattva towards a place not far from that place of the kingdom, outside of the kingdom of that king, and in that all good place by the name of All Good, there he stayed with the company of 7,000. The Moon Handsome gave the teaching. All the other bodhisattvas followed the instruction and did the practice. When they were staying in such a situation, one day the bodhisattva Moon Handsome, while was in equipoise, and when looking through the divine eyes, the celestial eye, clairvoyance, the king in his palace, many of the sentient beings, the bodhisattvas saw to be appropriate trainee to be giving teaching later. If the bodhisattva was going to give teaching to them, they would attain the higher realization of not reversing from the path. There was such, and this would depend on the Bodhisattva Moon Handsome. Bodhisattva Moon Handsome was able to see that, therefore, in order to give teaching to the people in the palace, Bodhisattva chose to go to the palace. At that time, the Bodhisattva disciple said to the king, "Oh, you should not go to the palace. The king is so fierce, and you could be attacked by the king. You should be subject to harm by the king." When this was mentioned to the Bodhisattva Moon Handsome, then the Bodhisattva Moon said, I cannot guard myself to guard the teaching. I should give up myself. So while Bodhisattva Moon Handsome, while knowing that there was imminent danger to his life, he went to the king's palace, and for 7 days he gave teachings to the entourage of the Buddha, and during night time he did the circumambulation of a stupa. For 7 days he did not think of food and drink, but kept giving teachings. And among the disciples in the Buddha's palace, many thousands of people were given teaching according to their mental capability, and they attained their respective realization and generated bodhicitta and attained bodhisattva grounds and so forth. There were many people attaining result, and on the 7th day the king came out of the palace, the queens and many of the our entourage were listening to the Bodhisattva, moon, handsome. The king became infuriated and passed the punishment to the Bodhisattva, moon cushion, that all his hands and limbs are to be chopped off and given to the slaughterers. So this was the punishment, the sentence passed. So when these were all cut, and the king went to the forest and stayed there for a few days, when the king returned back, all the entourage of the Bodhisattva had, although they all had been chopped with their limbs and so forth, they had become intact back, and the king and their bodies were all put together, and the king was very regretful and offered his apology and so forth. So in this way, the Bodhisattva, moon, handsome, so oneself and others in the verse 105, own suffering to remove, although being knowing that his life was at stake, but not minding that in order for the benefit of many people, he accepted their happiness. Many others, the last one is the king Viradatta, because having killed the Bodhisattva, moon, handsome, the king had done the work of harming others to be reborn in the lower realms. So the king, without any shyness toward that, he committed the non-virtuous act of killing the Bodhisattva and his entourage. So not only brings suffering to oneself, but also to others in terms of the quantity to accomplish the welfare of many sentient beings, many people. If one were to have suffering for oneself, without doubt to accept that. This is what it was in verse 105. By knowing the king's harm, did not remove his own suffering for making end the sufferings of many others, for making end sufferings of many others. So this is what is explained. So without listening to the entourage, the Bodhisattva went. Then the third is the benefit of meditating in that way. Verse number 106, the third is the equalizing and exchanging, and then the benefit of doing so, which has the 5 subparts. There's no big suffering in embarking soul in others' welfare. The happiness of that would be supreme. So one engaged in others' welfare, one's arrogance would become pacified, not reliant on return and consequences, because of reasons as thus it is right to meditate on equalizing of self with others. Page 44, bottom part, the benefits of meditating thus. The meditating, equalizing, exchanging of self with others, there are these many benefits listed. There's no big difference in embarking Bodhisattva embarking solely on others' welfare, even if the suffering of others are taken upon himself or herself, there's no suffering. This is the first part, verse 106. And then the second, the happiness that would be supreme. So such taking others' suffering upon oneself, there would be instead a supreme happiness, therefore, Bodhisattva, and getting others' welfare. Third, one's arrogance would become pacified because of taking others' suffering upon oneself. Bodhisattva's mind's arrogance and anger would become subsided, pacified, subsided. And then we are reading through the page 44, bottom part of the text too. And because of such reasons as thus it is right, not reliant on return and consequence, because of the very activity of taking upon others' suffering, there's less chance of thinking of return and consequences. Then the fourth, because the reason is that it is right to meditate on equalizing self with others. The first, there's no big suffering in embarking solely on others' welfare. Verse 106. Thus, when one's continually becomes familiarized with one, would be joyful and pursuing others' suffering as so one would even enter avicii as a swan taking to a lotus lake in taking others' suffering upon oneself. When such a thought becomes familiarized with, then when there is non-effort not required, when there's experience not requiring any effort anymore in that topic, then there will be a great joy of taking others' suffering upon oneself, like swans which enter into the lake. So when the swans flying in the sky, they become tired, they descend on the water hole. If they see a lake with many lotuses, a clean lotus, then they joyfully would enter into that lake like that. If it becomes for bodhisattvas, if it is for others' welfare, they are prepared to the torment realm of the avicii, which is the moment realm of without torment among the 8 hot torment realm. It is the one with the biggest sufferings, from the reviving and the black line and so forth downward. The 8 hot torment realm is the avicii, the moment without torment. So with the avicii, bodhisattva would enter avicii torment realm very joyful, like a swan taking to a lotus lake very joyfully, by not minding of the sufferings, joyfully entering into their fall. Even if there is a physical pain, there is a mental joy, there's no mental suffering. Second, the happiness of that would be supreme. So when engaged in others' welfare, verse 107, whatever is an ocean of joy when sentient beings become liberated, they would achieve also. Wouldn't that be supreme? What would it do to aspire for liberation for oneself only? By accomplishing others' welfare. For a bodhisattva, in the mind, that very joy in the mind of bodhisattva, by accomplishing others' welfare, so that bodhisattva's mind which would have a joy. So when sentient beings liberated, there's an ocean of joy for sentient beings' welfare. The sentient beings suffering by taking upon oneself. When sentient beings liberated from suffering, there's a ocean of joy in the bodhisattva mind. It is inconceivable joy, ocean of joy. Wouldn't that be supreme? So wouldn't that be the supreme? Second, it is the accomplishing of all aspiration. It wouldn't be the thing to be satisfied. What would it do to aspire for liberation for yourself alone, for oneself alone? Would there be any meaning to be achieving liberation for oneself alone? What would that do? Oneself alone, to be achieving liberation through that, there would be no benefit. Anyway, for the hearers and the Pratyek Buddhas, if you attain liberation of them, you have not completed your own goal, you have not completed others, you have not got rid of all negative things, you have not attained all excellent qualities. So what would then aspiring for liberation would achieve? This last line of the verse 107. In the Panjakaramati's commentary on the difficult point and the Sanskrit text. So what would the liberation like your corpse would do? The hearer's liberation state, there's no taste. There's like a food, there has to be taste. There's no taste. So the word is not corpse, not corpse in the English, but taste. So merely wanting to achieve the liberation of the hearers is like a thing without what taste is there in the Indian way of talking and in the way of the Sanskrit language. It is a very powerful word. Ras bin, naras, which is breath of taste. There's no meaning, there's no taste, there's no reasoning, there's no essence. Therefore, so devoid of taste, what would hearer's liberation do? So that would be okay. That is in the Indian text, the meaning. So third, one's arrogance would become pacified. As such, by doing others' welfare, there's yet no conceit and awe. Verse number 108. These two lines of the verse 108. Equalizing oneself with others and exchanging himself with others, that very thought, when it becomes strongly familiarized in one's mind, and when you actually engage in others' welfare, then if it is a person who is other than you, to be there's no thinking or motion thinking that you're doing someone else's work or others' work, because exchanging self with others instead of yourself, you consider others dear. Instead of others, you neglect your interest. So just as you had self-cherishing before, at this point when you have exchanged yourself with others, the others becomes fully your concern. So you do not think or do not have the notion of thinking that you are doing something of great gratitude to others. You are doing kind service to others, not wrong. Whatever thing of your interest you do, because there will be no haughtiness, because you consider that to be your task anyway. As such, by doing others' welfare, there's yet no conceit and awe. So conceit, or other word is arrogance. There's yet no arrogance and awe. Others' welfare and the intention to do so, if it is so strongly developed in your mind, the intention to work for others, when it becomes so strongly generated, then the thought of motion, thinking, I've done a service, I've done something, a favor, would not be there. Then the fourth subheading is not relying on return and consequence. Since one is single-minded in lacking others' welfare, there's no expectation for consequential return, because totally you are focused on accomplishing others' welfare. Therefore, whether you accomplish others' welfare or not, this is your full focus. By accomplishing others' welfare, to be expecting a profit for yourself, to be expecting karmic reward, you don't get that notion at all in your mind. You do not expect anything as a karmic result or consequence. With the small capable practitioner and the intermediate capable practitioner, when you train, if it's a person training on those two paths, then yourself to attain in next life a higher rebirth as a human, as a celestial being, or to have a clear mind, to have a good body, to have the karmic consequential attributes, to be doing for such reason a virtuous action. It's like you are putting a deposit, a capital, as if like doing a business transaction. There's no other intention or motive other than if you do generosity to others, you expect consequence and more for them. Here, because Bodhisattva thinks others' welfare is far more than your own welfare, because of doing others' welfare, then as regards the reward and the karmic return, there's no expectation at all. Only for others' welfare. Other aim, there is no other aim. Wouldn't there be a question? Wouldn't the Bodhisattva aim for enlightenment to be doing Bodhisattva practice? Of course, there is no. Of course, there may not be any activity, not with the presence of intention or wanting to achieve enlightenment. But because Bodhisattva's main intention is to accomplish sentient beings' welfare, therefore some action or activities of accomplishing others' welfare may be not with the presence of aspiration or liberation, for example. for others' welfare, to be doing harmful acts, to be entering non-virtuous actions. For others' welfare, there are few ways of explaining in the text about such action. For example, with the action of killing, some say it necessarily would be negative action. The act of killing, the action of killing is necessarily non-virtuous action, but some say that it depends on the motive. For example, the courageous navigator who killed the dark person holding a short spear, and by the navigator, the captain of the ship, killing the intruder with a dark body and a short spear, the captain was born in the realm of torment for a very short while, because the act of killing was non-virtuous. So the killing of the act of killing does not become a cause to attain enlightenment. So such action of Bodhisattva is whatever action and karmic consequence there happen, the Bodhisattva is not concerned. The Bodhisattva thinks it's okay. By killing a dark person with the short spear, Bodhisattva, as the captain, was able to accumulate the 9 eons. Accumulation merit was completed. How that has happened is the killing, the actual non-virtuous action of killing the person, to be wanting to, not minding how long one is going to remain in the realm of torment, and such a thought of determination to give up one's interest, to consider others dear. At that point, that Bodhisattva's mind as a captain, out of such mind, that very altruism mind was the reason the Bodhisattva as a captain was able to accumulate the merits of 9 aeons, not the actual act of killing. So this is what he mentioned. Because single-minded in others' welfare, so because having accomplished others' welfare, whether wonderful or not wonderful karmic consequences will happen, Bodhisattva is not concerned that through doing others' welfare may would become accumulation of merit for my progress on the path and ground to be improving. The Bodhisattva does not think of such at all. Then the 5th subheading is because of the reasons as thus it is right to meditate on equalizing of self with others, verse number 109. As such, just as one guards oneself from a small as unpleasant wounds, likewise one should have the mind of guarding others and the mind of compassion. Just as such, the mind of guarding others and the mind of compassion. Yourself and others having been equalized, it is right to be meditating on that equalization, how one should equalize. Just as from a small unpleasant wound one would guard oneself, the first 2 lines of verse 109, for example, out of self-interest mind and due to self-cherishing mind, how you guard yourself out of self-cherishing mind. If you look at a small thing, if someone speaks very unpleasant words, someone criticizes you, you try not to hear such, you try to guard against such unpleasant thing like that. Just as one guards oneself from as unpleasant words, others criticizing, others speaking bad behind you, you try to run away from that, you try not to hear of such. Likewise, one should have the mind of guarding others and the mind of compassion. Other sentient beings who are other than you, you should have a mind to guard them from suffering. You should have a compassion toward them as you do for yourself. This is verse 109. This is the advice it gives. Then the 4th subheading, if equalizing self with others become familiarized in one's mind, it can be generated, it is possible to be generated in your mind. Verse 110. Others, for example, others, when the argument is put forward, oneself is oneself, and others are others. Therefore, to others' body, to be thinking of as my body, that would not happen at all. And likewise, others' sufferings, to be thinking as my suffering, such thought cannot be possible. Others' happiness, suffering, to be seen as one's happiness, suffering. If there's happiness to be achieving, if it is suffering to be straight away going to remove, this would not be possible. This is what the argument brings. Because yourself and others equally, it cannot be generated. This is the other side's argument. If there's such an argument like that, then that is not right. The response, just as one relates to as mind, others' drop of semen and blood, because having become familiarized with though they are not my things, likewise with others' bodies too, why not consider as mine? There will be no difficulty in placing one's body elsewhere like that. Verse 110, 111. When you are not familiarized to be thinking others' body as one's life, as one's body as same, would be difficult to, maybe difficult to do. But when you become familiarized with, there's nothing you cannot do. Nothing about it that you cannot think in such a way. The example given is with the drops of semen and body. Our body is given an example. Our body, where it has come from, is others to your parents. Parents, drops and blood, the body has come from. So what has come from others' blood and semen, drop of blood and semen, this very body, due to ego grasping and due to familiarity with the ego grasping, you think, oh, it is my body. You don't think it is not my body. You do not think that it has come from somewhere else. So not even in the slide of your mind, that does not occur to your notion, to your thinking. Others' drops of semen and blood, that very thing that has come from drops of semen and blood, to be considering yourself truly to be yourself, as in ultimate truth, there's nothing that exists from its own side, and still, generally with familiarization with the mind, with the self-grasping, you think as your own, and if that my body, and if there's a suffering with it, you try to remove that suffering. If there's a happiness with the body, you try to achieve that. So like that, if you familiarize likewise with others' bodies too, why not consider as mine? Verse number 11, first two lines, with others' body, which is of the semen and blood, if you consider as your body, which you can do so with your body, you can have same notion placed on others' body as your body, because the composition are same, they are grasping by the mind and consideration of mind to be thinking. So why would not that be possible? There would be no difficulty in placing one's body elsewhere like that. Your body is similar to others' body. If you place or consider it to be so, there's no difference in that. Not becoming thing. Fourth line of the verse 110. This very line. In some Tibetan translation, it is not there. This is what Gyatso Rinpoche says. It is mentioned in Gyatso Rinpoche's commentary, footnote number 434. So if that line is not there, then because having become familiarized with, likewise with others' body too, why not consider as mine? There would be no difficulty in placing one's body elsewhere like that. So in Gyatso's commentary, there's mention, there is not in some translation, but in other translation, this line is there, and the Indian text also this line is there, and also in the Tibetan edition published by the monastery, here the line is there, and Gyaltsab also has given commentary on that line as well. Then the second is the manner of exchanging self with others, which has two parts, showing briefly and explaining extensively. the bottom of page 44 on text number 2. It is the very beginning of the subheading, the way to meditate on equalizing yourself with others, the way of exchanging self with others, page 44, but halfway down we are coming from that part of the outline, so this is the second part of that part. So there are two subheadings under that, explaining showing briefly and explaining extensively. Where's 112? The first is showing bravely. This has two parts: the manner of exchanging self with others, the reason such can become familiar. The first is the manner of exchanging self with others. Verse 112: by making oneself known that very self-cherishing is defective and cherishing others as oceans of excellent qualities, one has to fully abandon self-grasping and to meditatively familiarize with adopting others. In the extensive and the short version of Namim, this is the part where it has to think from all various manners, the shortcomings of self-cherishing thought, and to think from many avenues the benefit of self-thought cherishing others. This is where it comes from. Verse 112, by making oneself known that verily self-cherishing is defective, holding oneself dear, it is the root of all evils, and the thought cherishing other is the basis of all excellent qualities. All, as in Lama Chöpa, there are those lines. So to consider oneself dear is the door to all destitution, and to hold others as dear is the source of all excellent qualities. Is the excellent is the source of all excellent qualities, therefore it is the oceans of excellent qualities. By knowing this so, oneself should remove self-cherishing thought, and one should try to take up the thought cherishing others, to abandon fully self-grasping, and to meditatively familiarize with adopting others. Verse 112, that self-cherishing is the source of all shortcomings, and the thought-cherishing others is the source of all excellent qualities. If you by knowing this to be so, then if you meditatively familiarize with that, then you should fully abandon self-grasping thought, and you should try to practice, adopt the thought-cherishing others. To exchange self and others, of course, there's nothing to be exchanged. You cannot swap to others or others to your place. But with regard to exchanging self with others in your mind, sport, how you consider yourself to be dear, how you cherish yourself, more than that you should cherish others. When you want Bodhisattva training on the mind, then all other refers to all sentient beings. The word other includes all sentient beings. That is indispensable. The hearers, those who enter into the lower vehicle, hearers and Parsec Buddhas, they do have the limitless compassion, but why they do not have great compassion is because their compassion does not focus on all sentient beings. Their compassion is focused on limitless sentient beings, but not on all sentient beings. Here, exchanging self with others, what it means is all others here, whether we see them before oneself or not see them before yourself, whatever all sentient beings, that compassion and the attitude is covered to all sentient beings. This is the main focus of Bodhisattvas, practice. Therefore, the fault and shortcomings of self-cherishing, one should think about it without leaving any part missing in your meditation on the shortcomings of self-cherishing thought. So that was the showing bravely the manner of exchanging self with others, verse 112. The second is the reason such can become familiarized, verse 113. Just as hands and so on are accepted as branches of the body, likewise why not accept the embodied beings as branches of the wandering beings? One's hands and feet, these are they are separate limbs of the body, but they are being part of your body. You consider to be so, and you take care and guard. If you accept that to be so, verse 113 we're going through. Then if it is a sentient being, an embodied being, a celestial being, a nagas, smell eater, gandharvas, and a smell, or to consider them to be dear and cherishing them, when you familiarize that in your mind, then you would have them as part of your object to be considered dear. Why would that be possible? So this is the meaning. Likewise, why not accept the embodied beings as branches of the wandering beings? Verse 113. Here, the wandering beings refers to the sentient beings who are to be considered as dear, just as you consider hands and so on as branches of the body. Although they are separate, these limbs are separate parts of the body, but you consider as part of the body and guard and look after that. Likewise, all embodied beings, any sentient being that is with life, all of them are to be guarded by yourself as equally under the same group of wandering beings, sentient beings. Why wouldn't you not accept them as a branch? So then, in terms of time, today we shall have to leave it here. In brief, what has been explained earlier, the equalizing, exchanging self with others and training the mind in that way. These verses, the very meaning of the literal wording of the verses, there may not be any difficulty, but to apply that to the path of reasoning, and then to present the reasoning and to establish entitlement and to remove the possible con, then that part will be a little difficult there. Therefore, you with careful and cautiousness, especially those who are philosophers, follow reasoning, who are rational, it would be good if you can do study on them. In brief, please be kind enough to put into practice whatever has been explained. Camberno, Gerbrod, Los Angeles, Tembe, Nimbore, Soji, offering mandala in gratitude of the teachings. So the live cast in English is terminated here. Sure. goba kunjago mana jezi yadem kunjezi tezi bazi
Gyuto